Hello and welcome to the Product Marketing Festival. We have some fantastic sessions on the agenda for you today, but before we jump in, I have a very exciting announcement to make. The Product Marketing Awards are back for 2022 and I'm delighted to announce that nominations are now open. We received a whopping 181 New Yeek nominations last year, and this year we want even more PMM pioneers to be recognised. We have 7 top-notch categories for you to get involved in, and we can't wait to shout about the incredible product marketing talent within our community. The categories are Product Marketing Leader of the Year, Product Marketing Team of the Year, Product Marketing MVP of the Year, Product Marketing Newcomer of the Year, Positioning and Messaging Maestro of the Year, Product Launch of the Year, and Top Companies to Work in Product Marketing. Nominations are now open but must close on August 19th. So what are you waiting for? Spread the word, get your nominations in and celebrate those product marketing superstars that continue to go the extra mile. We'll be sharing a link to the nomination page in the chat throughout the day, so keep a lookout for that. We're also here if you have any questions, so please feel free to reach out via Slack or email. Now, after all the excitement, I just want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, speakers, and you, our lovely audience, for joining us today at the festival. Please make the most of these sessions by asking your questions and sharing your feedback in the comment section of the video. So with that, let's get back to the sessions.
All right, welcome everyone. Excited to talk to you today about working with and leading cross-functional teams. Imagine you wake up one morning and you see that a leader from another key function sent a dramatic message to sales leadership on a topic that you had been invested in from a product marketing perspective. There was no warning, no prior communication. They just went straight there and made your product marketing team look like you weren't prepared for the future and not doing enough. This happened to me a few years ago and was a stressful experience. And the reason why this happened was that we did not have clear alignment, we did not communicate with each other transparently, and we had no agreed process. We also did not have day-to-day projects that reinforced the partnership. This is an example of failed stakeholder management. It causes stressful situations and confusion for the departments involved. On the other hand, successful stakeholder management can create a much happier working environment, make people more productive, and drive business results. The better your stakeholder management, the more joy you and your team will have at work. I will share with you today how you can think about this systematically, including some advice and best practices from my experience of working at global technology companies. The framework and the thought starters I'm going to talk about will help you build effective relationships with your cross-functional partners and drive business results. Before I jump in, a little bit about myself. I'm Jan and I've lived and worked in 6 countries across Europe and APAC. Currently, I head up product marketing at TikTok, Australia and New Zealand. Prior to that, I spent 8 years at Facebook, now Meta, in Ireland and Australia in both sales and product marketing. I worked with cross-functional stakeholders throughout my career, including local, regional, and global functions and teams. My experience reflects working with people from a variety of backgrounds in both Europe and APAC within an American corporate environment. So a disclaimer here that your approach might differ depending on which cultures you operate in. For example, my German upbringing still has a strong influence on how I see the world, including how I approach people and work. So what do I do in stressful situations like the one I opened with? Well, I like to make myself a cup of tea. You will walk away today with a framework to think through as you build your relationships with cross-functional teams. I call it the teacup framework. It has different components which you need to think about as you build out cross-functional relationships and lead cross-functional teams. They're not mutually exclusive and there's overlap and mutual influence, but it's still helpful to cover them all. The components are trust, transparency, empathy, alignment, collaboration, unity, and process. These are all necessary ingredients as you lead and inspire your stakeholders. Let's kick it off with an important foundation of a salsa, which is trust. There's a good book by Harvard Business School professor Zadal Neely on the remote work revolution. It distinguishes between two kinds of trust. There's cognitive trust, which is faith in others' competencies and that they will do what they say they will do, and emotional trust, which means you believe that others care about you. My view is that you can always course correct if you realize your trust is being taken advantage of. So I operate on the belief that you should be generous and give trust automatically. There's no need for others to earn it first. I follow this guideline not only with cross-functional stakeholders, but also with the employees on my team. I don't need to see them doing the work. What I care about is the output and impact. There's no need to monitor their day-to-day. The other side of the coin is, while you should trust by default, what can you do to facilitate others having trust in you? Well, be clear about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. Follow through and do it repeatedly to achieve consistency. Specifically, I think it's much better to say no from the get-go than staying ambiguous and requiring lots of follow-ups that you're not planning to honor. For example, I once had a member from another department on a working group who verbally and repeatedly committed to the work, but then showed no engagement, did not show up to meetings, and did not do the work they were expected to do. Not only did this affect the one-on-one relationship with that employee, but also the overall relationship between departments. To build emotional trust, you want to share and make others feel comfortable sharing. That makes it easier to truly care about someone and their well-being, and then work together. Empathy is the key foundation here, which I will talk about in a bit. For example, during COVID lockdowns, I had a horrible day once when I was unable to look at work with optimism, and I felt emotionally safe to share this with my colleagues. And they shared their stories in return, which then helped me realize that I really needed to take a day off. The reaction and the support that I got then further helped build my trust. All right, I know I'm cheating, but there's another T that I don't want to underestimate. It stands for transparency, or the water in your cup. It's an interesting one, as if you, like me, work closely with sales, you do learn over time that you can't just share all the information in real time. For example, product roadmaps might not be accurate, and sharing them might set the wrong expectations with sales and clients. And you always have to manage communication effectively to not be confusing. So be as transparent as you can be, though, and explain why you don't want to or can't go into detail on certain things. And when it comes to working with other cross-functional teams, over-communicate. Share what's coming down from the global teams with your local stakeholders with as little filter as possible, so you're on the same page and you can work together on how to position things with the sales teams. What I've experienced many times is that departmental goals are misaligned globally or regionally, which makes alignment on the local level harder. But if you work transparently with each other, share information freely and support each other as one team, it is much easier to fix this on a local level. Transparency both requires trust, that the other teams won't just share confidential information, and it also builds trust. The more you share with other teams, the more willing they will be to share with you as well. Now, empathy, or the T-bag, is all about showing real interest in people and caring for them, putting yourself in their shoes. The more you understand what's going on with someone, the better you can interpret their behavior at work and ensure you're working together effectively. This might differ by culture, but it is my strong belief that, especially virtually, some personal sharing helps build empathy and trust. If you're aware that someone's dog is sick, that's good context on how they might be feeling that day and approaching work. Another piece of advice is to show care, not only to the people on your team, but also across functional partners. Empathy goes a long way, and it can be learned and improved. It will help you build meaningful one-on-one relationships that are not just transactional. Empathy also comes into play when people make mistakes. And sometimes people have their own goals that might not be in line with yours. My advice is give people the benefit of the doubt. At Meta, we had a saying to assume positive intent. So when somebody acted in a way that you find jarring or feel as if going against your interests or what was agreed,
find some non-nefarious reasons for why they might have acted that way first, and then have a conversation with them. I saw some advice from people during the pandemic that people were zoomed out and didn't want any more meetings. My point of view is yes, get rid of mass meetings with too many people where the content isn't universally relevant for everybody, but prioritize one-on-ones, take the time to get to know each other. Especially when working remotely, I find it's important to set aside 5 minutes at the start of each conversation to catch up and figure out what's top of mind for the other person. Not just how they're doing, but how they're feeling. People are willing to share more than you'd think. And these little conversations go a long way in helping you build empathy, which in turn then can drive mutual emotional trust. Our next ingredient is sugar, or alignment. Alignment is about figuring out what people's goals are, both personal and professional. It is about sharing what your own and your department's goals and plans are, and then finding a way to bring it all together to develop joint goals and also ensure you're not pulling into completely different directions. When you figured out your plans, or when you figured out your own plans, ensure you also do joint planning with cross-functional teams. Understand how the plans interact and where there are opportunities to execute together, because joint planning can then lead to joint execution. What I have found is that alignment is difficult to achieve on a group call. So what has worked for me is having one-on-ones with key stakeholders, aligned step by step, and then only have that final meeting to reconfirm everyone's commitment. This might be a big time commitment to do, but not only will you have stronger alignment at the end, you will also develop deeper relationships. Alignment is not a once-off. Yes, you should align on plans as part of your planning cycle, but as you move to execution, things might require readjustment. You will notice you might need realignment if you're surprised at another department's actions or if things are not moving. I find that tea also tastes better with milk, or collaboration in our case. Once you're aligned, truly collaborate on the outcome. Don't just work away on your own. For example, when collaborating with the marketing science team at TikTok, we set up a joint pillar that is aligned between both teams, and we have co-leads for marketing science and product marketing on the individual sub-pillars. The projects that these pillars are tackling drive joint goals that were set as part of the alignment process and reinforce the commitment to these goals during the day-to-day. At Meta, we had a thanks bot, and at TikTok, we have a similar tool that allows you to send recognition to your cross-functional colleagues with their manager in CC. That goes a long way in rewarding collaboration. Next, you need a cup for your tea, which represents unity. When presenting to sales, present as a united cross-functional team rather than compete with each other. When presenting to clients, present as a united team with sales rather than contradicting them. For external meetings, what I found is that briefs help. Get sales to tell you what they want the outcome of the meeting to be and give you all the background information you need. Then you can be the most effective. When sharing internally, lift each other up, call out the great work of your cross-functional colleagues when you present, and recognize the contributions rather than claiming all the credit to yourself. This unity will increase sales confidence in you. Finally, you need a kettle to boil your water. This stands for the processes and structures you need to put in place for everything to work and be sustainable. This can be documentation, a task force, regular meetings, mechanisms for conflict resolution, or working groups with joint goals that ladder up into each department's goals. For example, I like to document alignment and collaboration to be able to refer to the work easily across the business. So that can be a simple document where both departments put down their mission, vision, and goals, and then you write down areas of collaboration and how you will execute on them. When working remotely across time zones, a process for async collaboration is key. For example, in a previous role, I had global meetings in my calendar for 2 a.m. my time in Australia. I value work-life balance, so the process we put in place was for me to leverage meeting docs to ask questions async and then watch back the recordings to see the discussion and get my answers. In addition, you can find someone to stand in and be vocal for you in the meeting. For example, I had an ally in Europe that I caught up with one-on-one and who could represent APAC on my behalf. Another useful process is to provide regular update emails or instant messages for key projects to keep everyone in the loop. Once you've got all these components in place, you can take it one step further and lead and inspire cross-functional teams. Now let's move on to a concrete example. In a previous role at Meta, I was leading our efforts on the future of data and privacy across APAC. All from my bedroom, because this was at the height of COVID lockdowns, and my cross-functional partners were spread across the region, especially Singapore and Japan. During that time, Apple started rolling out their app tracking transparency framework alongside iOS 14.5. So if you have an iPhone, you will have noticed that you're now being asked whether you want apps to track you or not. What looked like a simple change to consumers had a significant impact on the personalization made possible through digital advertising and required a lot of preparation. We needed to prepare sales teams and advertisers, share actions for them to take, and answer countless questions in a highly uncertain environment. We also had to instill a change management mindset. Any guidance we gave one day could change dramatically the following day, with new information from Apple coming in and global teams making decisions or changing course. So what did the work entail? iOS 14.5 touched many different cross-functional teams, so I had to be closely aligned to their leadership. I built a first draft for a joint plan and then looked for input from cross-functional leaders. I also had to bring on board the people from each function whose help I needed for the execution. This was not a one-off process because the whole launch was dynamic and we would receive new information from Apple regularly. We had to be flexible and realign as needed throughout. To prepare for the change and for the rollout, I set up an APAC-wide cross-functional task force, including marketing science, solutions engineering, legal, technical product support, partnerships, sales learning, and more. We ran external webinars, weekly internal workshops, bi-monthly trainings, and kept sales leadership in the loop through weekly updates. As a cross-functional team, we had weekly meetings leading up to the launch to realign, report on what our functions were doing, keep track of our joint targets, and plan activations. We also had to ensure that communication was clear and each cross-functional stakeholder knew what to do. We also prepared an APAC mission control model for what would happen once Apple launched the change, because we didn't have a clear date. Once mission control kicked in, we then ran daily stand-ups during and post-launch with all key cross-functional representatives and joint office hours with sales to ensure APAC questions got addressed, and when necessary, we then shared inbound with the global teams. So how did I apply the TCUP framework in this case? Well, I built trust through regular one-on-ones with each of the leaders, not just talking about work, but also sharing openly and by being a good, reliable partner. I was completely transparent with the information that came down through my department, which then encouraged transparency from other departments, giving us a full picture on the regional level. In my catch-ups with other departments and with sales, I showed empathy by emphasizing that we were all in this together. This was a big challenge with tons of uncertainty, but we were up for the task. And also this happened during COVID. So everyone was going through a lot, and I always needed to be mindful of how I communicated. I built alignment by drafting a plan and then getting input from cross-functional leaders that we all signed off on and adjusted as needed. We collaborated closely and shared the credit across all the different activations that we ran. For example, we had strong cross-functional representation across both internal and external Q&As. We showed unity in front of the sales team by coordinating closely on communication, aligning on a weekly basis, and supporting each other rather than trying to compete. All this was helped by a rigorous process, which we captured as part of the mission control model to bring as much structure as possible into the uncertainty. So I hope you learned something today and will find the TCUP framework useful. It's something to think through when you work with and lead cross-functional stakeholders. As for the example from the start, that shocking email, We connected, and the relationship between our departments flourished after this incident. We put a plan together, we started collaborating, building trust, and supporting each other. It was a great learning experience, like everything in life that goes wrong. That's it from me today. Thank you.